So coaching and mentoring are very similar in their purpose, their role, and in their relationship, right? So as a coach, as a mentor, we're really partnering with people to grow and develop. We want them to do their best thinking. We become a learning or a thinking partner. And the relationship is really built on respect and trust, right? It's a supportive relationship. In process and focus, this is where coaching and mentoring really differ. It's a subtle difference, but it makes a big difference in the experience for the coachee or the mentee, and also makes a difference in the experience of the result. So in coaching, we're drawing out knowledge, we're questioning, we're engaging, we are taking a back seat, we are spotlight operators. In mentoring, we are sharing knowledge, we're sharing our best practices. Here's what I would do, here's how I did it when I was your age, right? Sometimes mentoring tends to take a little bit of a more senior person relationship with a more junior person. But the focus in coaching is I'm trying to develop a strong problem solver. As a mentor, I'm trying to assure the problem is dissected and solved. Whether it's me solving it or you solving it, I'm helping you, but a lot of times I'm leading. In a coaching conversation, I'm a facilitator as opposed to a leader, right? And I'm putting the focus a little bit on the coachee. And for some people, that can actually be really uncomfortable, but that's okay. The discomfort is where the best growth actually happens. So this is my definition that I've taken from so many different schools of thought and all the different trainings and education that I've taken and all the different conferences and things I've participated in. I say coaching is the art and science of facilitating positive change. It's an art because it does take developing your own signature style, and there is a lot of science behind coaching and how it can produce results. So it's not like my opinion about coaching. There's, a lot of people that pay a lot of money to do a lot of research to understand the impact of coaching on the individual and organizations. Coaching is done through a combination of active listening, powerful questioning, and supporting an individual in designing and accomplishing their own stated goals. This is key. In a coaching relationship, I do not state your goals. Now, a lot of times when we're asking leaders and managers to coach, they're operating in performance management systems that have the leader defining the goals of the other person. And that's where sometimes coaching can kind of get a little bit confusing because, well, my leader is telling me that these are my goals, right? And so, or these are the deliverables I'm going to be held accountable for. So how do I participate in that? So we're going to get to that. So what does a coaching culture look like, right? Now, I am going to share with you in a little bit a case study of creating a coaching culture that's actually still happening, an organization that I've been working with and with their people managers. But in a coaching culture, coaching is considered a key approach for development. By the way, just a small pause here. If you have a question about anything I'm saying, please feel free to pop it in and I will be happy to check on it. We have some help here, some staff also helping me to get some of these questions. So please just make sure you pop it in there. As well if you have a question. In a coaching culture, coaching is used as a key approach for development. It becomes a required skill for managers. And what that means is it actually is mentioned in job descriptions, okay, that we expect people to be able to use those coaching skills. In an advanced, evolved coaching culture, you're going to find high levels of engagement and accountability. And that's a result of positive coaching relationships happening between leaders and team members, right? Coaching is also used to support performance, right? Rather than a lot of telling, there is a lot more of co-creating with the leader and the direct report. Coaching is also used to solve problems in a coaching culture. So instead of a couple of leaders going in a back room trying to figure something out, in a coaching culture, I'm bringing together the team and I'm asking them to do their best thinking. I'm asking them for solutions. I'm involving them in those solutions. And in a coaching culture that's really evolved, we come to know that organization as a learning-oriented organization. And this means that at the forefront of their business strategy, the development of people is seen just as key as the development of a product or a service. And a learning-oriented organization deeply understands that their first customer is their employee. And they deeply understand the connection between creating that relationship with the employee, helping them to be successful, and the outcome of whatever that business stands for or whoever they're engaging with. So this is sort of what it looks like, right? When a coaching culture is being stated, and as it's evolving, this is some of what it looks like. Now, the International Coach Federation and the Human Capital Institute did some research on this. They've actually very, very recently updated this. They continue to do studies on coaching in an organization and how it impacts results. So there actually is an impact on revenue. We can see a little bit of the coaching culture versus not having the coaching culture in the sort of the revenue world and the productivity and profitability conversation. Managers and leaders use these skills and they spend a good chunk of their time using coaching activities, and they could actually use it even more in their everyday conversations. So, almost over two-thirds of the respondents who use coaching skills cite more opportunities for coach-specific training as necessary to help support ongoing coaching skills and development. There's nothing more frustrating than telling managers they should be coaching and not giving them any support. Again, coaching's not cheerleading, it's not being positive, it's not being supportive. Those are feelings or intentions. They're not actually training people in coaching and having people understand what coaching is. So when coaching is being used in an organization, at the individual level, it transforms the performance management conversation, okay? And I'm gonna be sharing a little bit more about that when I go into the case study. Oh, great, Liza, I'm glad that it's helpful. So it also ignites creativity. Coaching creates a conversation that excavates that which is lying dormant in another person. And it brings out creativity in that person such that if we were not coaching, if we were just telling, if we were training, if we were consulting, if we were mentoring and we were advising, we'd never get to that creativity. Coaching can also be used as career development. I've implemented several career development initiatives in organizations where people put in an actual coaching process in large matrix organizations for how we develop our people to forward their career in our organization using coaching and making sure our managers have those skills. Now in teams, when we're using coaching, there's innovation, there's collaboration, there's team cohesion, there's a whole world of everybody just working better together that becomes the result. So in a coaching culture, a person goes from boss to coach. Again, you can Google going from boss to coach and you're gonna find a ton of articles that none of them are gonna tell you how. They're just gonna tell you that you should do it, right? So a boss is one who manages work getting done, and a coach is one who supports the success of the people getting the work done. Okay, so how do we do this? We're going to talk about the how. So this is a case study that's actually still happening. I'm the main lead on this initiative. There are 300 people managers in the hospitality industry that are as part of this initiative. So as part of my organization in this initiative with this organization, we did a big employee engagement survey, and we got a 92% response rate on that employee survey, which is pretty high for thousands of employees. And so the number one thing that came out of that is that people wanted better communication with their managers and better feedback on their performance. So this came up to me, and I've got to create an engaging and innovative adult learning experience where I can provide advanced coaching skills in a 24/7 environment. We were in the hospitality industry and managed to engage these people managers from all shifts to grow and learn as coaches, right? Because the only way we were going to accomplish what people were actually asking for as their top need was to give people those skills. Now, you want to be really careful here, because when you're talking about going from boss to coach, there's what I call the training trap. And the training trap is bringing in a trainer for 3 days and putting your people managers in it and expecting them to get value. You might as well light that money on fire, okay? As an adult learning specialist, I can tell you, and there's all science behind that, and Darren can tell you, the amount of information that's retained from a 3-day training is so low and such a waste of an investment that we think it's effective. We get a lot of marketing about how it's effective, but it doesn't contribute value. And really, multiple learning touch points is where the value is provided. And that's kind of where Cloverleaf comes in. So I'm going to throw it over to Darren just to speak to those multiple learning touch points.
Yeah, one of the things that Stephanie and I talked about with this presentation is, to her point about layering kind of the learning opportunities. Classroom type work is good, but oftentimes with that forgetting curve, when people walk out of the room, they only retain a certain portion of it. And one of the great things about Cloverleaf is that it does integrate with the tools that employees are using every day, so they can take some of the lessons that they've learned either about their own, their own self-learning, or even about the people around them. And one of the things that Cloverleaf does is actually pushes this coaching content out in the tools that they're using every day, right? So you don't have to have reams of binders that you kind of flip through and try to decipher or interpret some of the information that exists across assessments. And we can activate those assessments in the tools that they're using, so that when they leave that workshop, assuming that they are doing some sort of in-classroom training, that they have a way to activate that information in the meetings that they're having, in the one-on-one conversations that they have, in the Slack channels or Microsoft Teams channels. So these opportunities to really focus on those relationships. And I saw a lot of comments that came through the chat messages specific to, understanding that relationship. And that's something that Stephanie mentioned earlier about that. One of the key drivers for disengagement, or one of the key issues when you're trying to create a coaching culture, is that focus on the relationships. And the great thing about Cloverleaf is it pushes this coaching content out in the channels that people are engaging with each other in. So just a quick little commercial, but these are some examples of how that content shows up. And it can supplement some of the work that you might do when you're rolling this coaching culture out in a way that actually activates that on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely. And that's great. One of the things I'm going to be sharing, the project that I'm sharing about in this case study, I had not been acquainted with Cloverleaf. And one of the things that I'm going to be sharing is how this project could have been made better with the use of some of the approach that Cloverleaf takes. And really, the product and the act of being able to support a coaching culture really work hand in hand. So how we sort of went about this. Now, keep in mind, I'm an external vendor, and we needed partnership with human resources. And so we worked with them to evaluate and transform the performance management process in partnership with the senior leadership team. Now, I don't want to scare you, but the entire senior leadership team of this organization met monthly with us for a full day for a year. And it did have their backing. Now, it's not to say that if you don't have that, you can't implement this. It just is helpful when there's at least some support and buy-in from senior leadership. And so we did initiate a rollout of a one-day in-depth coach training, right? That was a catalyst. It wasn't an end, right? It was what we call a kickoff. We kicked off and we introduced a coaching model. We used the GROW coaching model, as I'm sure most coaches here know that model. It's very simple. It's very easy to implement and teach. And we actually had people do coaching practice in the training. So it wasn't about just giving a bunch of information. It was doing some skill training and having them practice. And then from there, there's a 6-month live virtual coach skill development program in cohorts of 50. And what that looks like is each session is every 2 weeks, and it's an hour, and it's live virtual just like this using Zoom. And there's skill building, and then there's a coaching challenge. So the coach leaves the training and goes off to practice that with their direct reports. So as the people are learning about the coaching culture, they're also now giving it back. And I would say that, one of the ways that, Cloverleaf could have really assisted this process was as people were learning to be coaches, them getting coaching by getting that curating content, them getting the level of information from an assessment so that they could understand certain tendencies about themselves would definitely have enhanced, right, the delivery of some of that coaching. And then the program actually culminates in a 4-week coaching practicum where each person in the cohort is assigned to coach someone. They actually select a coachee on their team and they coach someone for 4 sessions over the course of 4 to 6 weeks. And then that person evaluates their performance. And it really creates an in-depth use of coaching skills that cannot be ignited in going to some kind of 3-day seminar. It's skill, practice, skill, practice. And where the Cloverleaf platform fits nicely in when you are training managers into coaching, it's that immediate personalized support that really helps people with their own self-awareness to be able to support the people that they are coaching. And then every person was actually awarded an internal coaching certification. So they became a company name certified coach. And there has been such a demand that I'm actually going back next week. They want advanced coaching skills, right? So we're doing coaching summits annually to help people elevate their coaching skill. And we're keeping a monthly sort of webinar to help people support people in that coaching skill. And so if you're an external coach, this is something that when you're working with an organization is something to look at as a potential project. It's also something to look at, if you're a coach and you're coaching people within an organization and they're managing other people, you want to be able to help them understand how to bring those skills to the everyday. And that means giving them those skills and coaching them around coaching, which is, obviously something that takes a long time. The only way to learn how to coach is to coach, right? So again, this is some of the feedback from some of the senior leadership team. Obviously, this is directly from the CEO speaking about how the evolution of the coaching culture directly has affected retention, engagement, being able to attract high quality talent. Again, I will send you all of these. This is feedback from a participant, a people manager in the program, and then also a coachee, someone who was was being coached as a result of the person getting that coach skill training. And so you can really see the level of confidence that people are getting from understanding really how to be a coach in an organization. And also the coachee really sees that coaching that they're receiving, they see it as an extension of the organization. So it increases organizational loyalty. It makes them feel like my organization is doing something for me. I feel heard. And so whether you're an external coach, whether you're an internal HR leader, whether you're an internal coach, right? This is the impact, right? We're speaking to the impact of coaching being a key critical stated communication requirement for managers. And again, you cannot do it by asking people to coach. They have to understand how to coach. They have to have the knowledge of themselves, similar to what they could get from interacting with something like Cloverleaf, to be able to have those interactions. So, well, now a lot of times you come on these webinars and you're like, okay, that sounds great, but what do I do? Well, here are some simple next steps, right? So you want to first look at your performance management process, right? Is it set up with multiple touch points? Multiple touch points in the performance management process. And when I say set up, I mean required, not, oh, some managers have multiple touch points, some don't. Are we setting a precedent that performance management should be happening in small increments, that feedback should be given, that coaching should be used? So Darren, I'm going to kick it over to you in terms of some now what's. Oh, Darren, I think
Sorry, I know I had it on mute. Sorry. I think it's a really good point too on the feedback and multiple touch points. I know one of the things that we do at Cloverleaf is kind of set the expectation for some sort of weekly one-on-one. And I think there's clearly a shift away from annual performance reviews to some more regular kind of performance conversations. And so you don't just get this kind of like end of year surprise of, like this is how I'm performing against expectations, but that there is an ongoing conversation. And one of the ways that Cloverleaf supports that is not just through those integrated insights, but really kind of a pocket coach or a guide for individual managers or leaders in the organization that they can drill down on individual team members, get coaching insights that are specific to the kinds of things that you might want to coach them through, right? So examples would be conflict, how to manage conflict, and really getting them to a point where they can be accountable for managing difficult relationships in the context of the team. What might be drivers for that? What might be motivating their behavior, and instead of just making assumptions, actually addressing those things on a one-on-one basis. And so it's really that content that is personalized and relevant to the relationships that they're working in. It doesn't have to be an intact functional team. The nice thing about Cloverleaf is it's built with the team in mind. And so you can spin up a new team if it's cross-functional and it's, people outside your area of expertise or that you're working in on a daily basis. You can just create a new team and invite those people into it. And, you immediately kind of get those insights that you can work off of in your coaching conversation. So that's just a quick, again, small little commercial on how Cloverleaf can support this process.
No problem. Another thing you can do is review your new manager training program. So, if you have, is there a protocol for when someone is promoted to a people manager, be a people manager in your organization? Is there some precedent for being a manager in your organization, even if they've been a manager somewhere else? You want to have, this is how we lead, right, at X organization. You also may want to brainstorm an ideal coaching strategy, looking at resources, excuse me, education. And look, this organization had us, do cohorts of 50. You can start small and say, you know what, let's test a cohort of 5 high potential leaders and get them trained in coaching, right? And see what the impact is on them, right? So, or see what the impact is on the organization. Let's test that out, or take one department, right? So it's not a matter of like, hey, we want to put everybody in something like this. But if you want people to be coaches, you've got to provide that coaching support. And you've got to provide some kind of ongoing conversation and structure for it. So again,
before you move on to this next slide too, real quick, I noticed that Jamie earlier had mentioned that she was a new manager, and had a new team member that it looked like she was, excuse me, that she was integrating and looking for opportunities to grow as a manager through that process. So one of the things that you mentioned there was review new manager training programs. Are there any specifics that maybe could directly relate to Jamie's situation? Or Jamie, if you have some more specific questions around that, feel free to pop those in the chat window.
So Jamie, one of the things I would definitely suggest that as part of your development plan with your manager, that you have an objective specifically around leadership development, and that you plan actions around that. Now that can be a combination of individual training. It can be a combination of some reading. One of the things I always tell new managers to do is read a book called The Leadership Challenge. It's fabulous research. I think it's in its 6th or 7th edition. It's by Kozas and Posner, and it really talks about some 5 critical practices for leaders that have shown to produce results across cultures, across industries, across sizes of teams. So you really want to have that as a stated objective for yourself as part of your performance management, and then have action items. Now that can also be, again, it can be reading, it can be resourcing, it can be looking for, there are tons of free webinars and resources like this that you can use, but you've got to put together a little bit of a professional development plan. If it's not being offered for you, you've got to go ahead, lead and create it, and be a demand for it, and hold yourself accountable for it. So I hope that answers your question. So I know, Liza, you asked a question about if you're starting and you're a new coach. So if you're a new coach, I'm going to have one suggestion only: master coaching. Become a great coach, right? Practice coaching, focus on coaching, right? Whether it's doing pro bono work, whether it's coaching, people, in within a certification program, focus on coaching, right? Too many people start with a pretty website, right? Focus on coaching, become a great coach, right? Become a coach where you can trust yourself to go and coach people. And in conjunction with that, you'll know when to start building your business. Some book recommendations I am going to make. Again, Leadership Challenge, I highly recommend. Also, Coactive Coaching. Coactive Coaching is my coaching Bible, such that I have it right on my desk. And this is one of the most fabulous coach training resources. And they actually have a Coactive Coaching toolkit. I'm going to send you all of this, so do not worry. I made quick links for it so that you could see. The Coactive Coaching Toolkit gives you a lot of forms, processes. It also is helpful for both internal and external coaches. For internal people and HR people, people that are creating coaching strategies for an organization, you must read Gallup's new book, It's the Manager. It really is, it boils it down to, that old adage, you don't leave your job, leave your boss. This is all the research that supports the manager direct report relationship is almost it's more powerful than any other factor that goes into retaining people. And this is all the research and the commentary behind it. So I highly recommend this book, It's the Manager. It just came out at the end of last year. It's incredible. And one of the main focuses they have in there is going from boss to coach. And they're really going to speak to the science of it. Also, if you do want to discuss this further, I'm happy to extend a complimentary coaching culture consultation, say that 5 times fast, and I'm happy to talk with you a little bit more about how to advance that coaching culture in your organization. So I'm happy to support you. My contact information is here. I am going to be sending you a follow-up email, again, with all of these resources and all of the, I'll see if I can add in some others as well that might be helpful. Does anyone have any other questions? Or Darren, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, let me jump in just on a couple of pieces. Just back to the point about the role that the manager plays in obviously not just coaching, but just in terms of engagement and performance inside the organization. And again, back to Gallup, not necessarily that particular book, but when they look at the annual workplace survey that they do nationally, and I think they've expanded that internationally, out of the top 10 reasons or factors that influence engagement or potentially disengagement the most, 5 of those 10 are relationships inside the workplace. And most of those relationships are based on the work team that you're a part of. I think 3 of those 5 are directly related to the, your direct reporting relationship or your manager, however you refer to that. And so clearly it has a significant impact on engagement. And, really a big part of coaching is that focus on relationships, right? Not only the coach to the person being coached, but also just in terms of empowering people in the teams to, take accountability, feel like they have the right level of skill to, whether it's conflict or it's, identifying those opportunities for growth inside the teams that they're a part of. And one of the things that we really focus on at Cloverleaf is really just creating language and empowering specific insights around how to take accountability around some of those things. So I think it really is such a huge and important factor. And I think the resources that you've offered there are really good and compelling. One of the things that, when you and I were talking about this content, and I think you'd mentioned this earlier, is that senior leadership team buy-in. And, the hospital example that you gave, or the healthcare system example that you gave, you talked about senior leadership showing up for a day every month. And that really just seems obviously really compelling, and I think most people that are on this call today are probably thinking, man, I'd love to have that level of commitment. But if you don't have that level of commitment and maybe you can't start at the top, what are ways that people can get started? Maybe in some smaller ways or with smaller groups or cohorts inside their organization to at least get started with something, as opposed to, feeling like they have to roll out some really large initiative in their organization. What are some ways that they can step into that?
So I think, even just looking at some of the key high potential, budding leaders, what I call rising stars in your organization, and ensuring that, similar to what I was saying to Jamie, that they have some kind of specific objective within their performance management, goals for the year around developing themselves as coaches, right? Or identifying, you've seen here a little bit about what it is to be a coach and what it is to provide. If you can think of 3 people right now in your organization that would really benefit, right, from learning more about coaching and from getting the support that they need around becoming a great coach, and ensuring that those people and their direct report have that as a stated goal, right, for the year. It's still early enough in the year to add a goal for 2020, and then putting together a development plan for that person within the organization. If I obviously shared the case study at an organizational level. If you can start to identify at the individual level people that are going to be most likely to contribute back to the organization and start to chip away at the coaching culture, just identify those 3 people, just 3, just start there, right? And do some testing, right? See what it looks like, evaluate and work with that person over time, even if it's not you, even if you're nobody loves anything better than being brought into their manager's office for good, right? Hey, we've identified you as someone we want to invest in, and we want to make sure that you have this as a state, are you interested in this as a stated goal, right? or you've expressed you want leadership in the organization, coaching is a great way to be able to advance that leadership development path. So again, I think just identifying some high potential people. I think for yourself, if you're a leader within the organization, to get the necessary support and training for yourself and have a development plan yourself around how you want to evolve that coaching culture, or who are the key relationships you need to build, right? Identifying those relationships you need to strengthen to be able to sort of chip away at opening the door.
One more question for you as well, Stephanie. So, obviously our platform includes assessments like DISC and Enneagram. What do you feel like the role of assessments are in the coaching process? I mean, obviously we believe that there's a huge component, because creating some self-awareness and then also being able to understand the unique behavioral styles of the people that you're coaching can help you be potentially more effective, or maybe even help them identify some of those blind spots in their work effort. Is that a key tool for coaches in this process? And then are there other tools like assessments that are critical to the success of being able to roll something like this out?
So, I mean, I've always been a big advocate of assessments. I've never seen a more useful display, a more useful visual, and a more useful application of integrating assessment awareness into a leader's development plan as I've seen in Cloverleaf. So, a lot of times it's kind of almost a waste to go off and do a singular assessment with someone, and then they have a big packet that sits on their desk, or a big file PDF that sits in the folder they can't find. I actually think that the best investment in actually using these assessments is the way Cloverleaf portrays it and uses it as a learning tool, because you read the report and then you're done. Right? But what if having those key pieces of using those assessments that trigger actions, those coaching tips, that curated content, I think is actually getting the mileage out of the investment on the assessment, right? So I think that it actually makes it a living, breathing awareness tool, as opposed to it's kind of like the same thing as the one-shot 3-day training, doing the one shot, reading the report. It's over. Oh, I did that years ago, DISC. Well, I don't even know anymore, right? But so I think that the use of the assessments, from developing someone as a coach to being a coachee, right, and understanding myself and being able to better prepare for my own coaching sessions, to then being able to have those assessments be used from a team perspective, I think is invaluable. And because a lot of us are visual learners, the way that the Cloverleaf platform is set up, it's actually just, I mean, look, I'm a coach, and I've never seen a better use of the assessment knowledge on an ongoing basis as I've seen in the platform. And I think it's really something that takes the awareness and creates the possibility for action. And that's really what you want. You want the possibility for action.
Cool. Well, one more question that I can think of, and before I ask this, anyone else have questions on the line? Again, feel free to type those into the chat window. We want to be able to respond to any other questions here with the remaining time that we have. But one more question that I'm guessing is probably on the minds of some of the people here is like, hey, is this, I'm going to have to sell this to someone in the organization. And people obviously want to know about ROI. A part of that ROI equation is the cost. Obviously, a big part of this is just time. But are there other costs that people should be considering, or does this have to be an expensive initiative for the organization to roll out?
It doesn't have to be an expensive initiative, but and I think if you start small, even providing coach training, specific coach training for a small cohort of people, I think sometimes it can be comparable to sending a bunch of people to a conference for 4 days, right? And all that travel and all that stuff. So I think investing it in a longer term drip learning process is something that also protects your talent, right? Because if I feel like someone is providing an avenue, right? It's a double-edged sword, right? Well, it's killing two birds with one stone, right? It's investing in the person, right? But it's also, you wind up, if you're retaining them, right, you're saving money down the line, right? So if you're creating that retention piece and you're decreasing turnover by investing in these, especially the high potential people, your high potential people have the most chance of leaving. So if you start investing in them, right, and showing that you want them to grow and showing that support, then at the end of the day, that's going to save you money, right, from losing them to an organization that might be providing that.
Yeah, cool. And I see that, Lisa, you asked a question about just the account types and the cost of Cloverleaf. So we do offer plans that really can support an unlimited number of people. So I'll just reach out to you directly after this webinar, just with some plan information, and make sure that we can answer some of the specific questions you have about the platform. But we do have lots of different options to support, coaching on an external basis, coaching, across the enterprise, and, an unlimited number of teams and people inside those organizations as well. So that's that. I did not see any other questions come through. Do you have any other thoughts, Stephanie, before we kind of wrap up here today?
No, I just want to thank you. I want to acknowledge everybody on this webinar right now, because I know that you are champions of people, and that sometimes it's really, really hard to do the work that you do, and you can see it so clearly. And I understand and relate to the frustration of sometimes having to get people to buy into developing other people. And I want to just encourage you not to give up, and to keep standing for that level of care and commitment to your workforce and to your coachees. We need you. So I just want to acknowledge you for all the things that nobody sees that you do. And I want to say thank you for that. And just to keep going with all of the things that really make a difference with human beings and organizations, and with your coachees as well.
That's great. If you don't mind, Stephanie, just advance to the last slide here. I've also included some my contact information. So again, feel free to reach out to me. We're going to send a follow-up recording of this out as well, along with some resources. So Stephanie mentioned that she's going to have some resource links and some different things that she can send out to support the process. And one other thing that I wanted to mention, the message that we send out that will include the link will include some specific product guides that can help in those one-on-one conversations, and those performance reviews, because those are some areas, or those performance conversations, those are typically areas from a coaching standpoint that moving from that like boss to coach is really where the rubber hits the road, is in those conversations. And I think those guides can be helpful. And I think that's it. We appreciate everyone's time today, and just be on the lookout for those messages. Thanks. Have a great day.
Joseph, I appreciate it. Thanks. I was saying thanks. Thank you, Darren, too. But thank you for your comment, Joseph.